block rewards slashed in half, power bills through the roof, and next-gen mining rigs dunked in liquid like they're training for the Olympics. Yeah, welcome to Bitcoin mining in 2026. Today, we're breaking down whether crypto mining in 2026 is still worth your time, for hobbyists, side hustlers, or big budget pros. From hardware to ROI math, regulation to cooling tech, this is your full picture. Let's get into it. Bitcoin mining in 2026 looks nothing like the garage rig fantasy people still have in their heads. Block rewards are smaller, ASICs are radically more efficient, immersion tanks are everywhere, and most hash power now lives inside industrial facilities with long-term power contracts. And yet, somehow, mining is not dead. 2026 comes right after a major turning point for Bitcoin mining, the 2024 halving. That event cut the amount of new Bitcoin miners earned per block by 50%, which hit revenues hard and forced everyone in the industry to rethink how they operate. Since then, mining companies have focused heavily on becoming more efficient, scaling up their operations, and running things more like serious businesses than scrappy side projects. At the same time, mining setups have started to look more like traditional data centers. Some are even sharing infrastructure with high-performance computing, HPC, or AI systems. Not using the same machines, but using the same cooling systems, power layouts, or buildings. These overlaps show how the line between crypto mining and other types of advanced computing is starting to blur. Back in Bitcoin's early days, think 2010 to around 2016, mining was something you could do from your bedroom. People mined with laptops, then desktop GPUs, and eventually with the first purpose-built machines called ASICs. The difficulty of mining, how hard it was to find a block, was low enough that hobbyists could actually earn Bitcoin without needing a warehouse full of machines. It was like the Wild West. Anyone with a basic setup and cheap electricity had a shot at earning rewards. The system felt decentralized, not because people made a big ideological stand, but because it was just easy and cheap enough for anyone to jump in. Fast forward to 2026, and that simplicity is gone. The Bitcoin network has grown massively. More miners have entered. The math behind mining, called difficulty, has scaled up, and the reward system has changed drastically, mainly due to the programmed halvings that occur every 4 years. The most recent one, in April 2024, cut the block reward from 6.25 to 3.125 Bitcoin. That means miners now earn less Bitcoin per block mined, even as the cost to stay competitive has gone up. Because of this, mining has shifted from a casual DIY project into a full-blown industrial operation. Most of the mining power now comes from huge data centers, often in remote areas, filled with thousands of machines running 24/7. These facilities are often tied directly to power plants or renewable energy sources, and the companies that run them negotiate long-term energy contracts to keep electricity costs low. In other words, the barrier to entry has skyrocketed. It's not just about the machines anymore, it's about infrastructure, access to cheap power, cooling systems, and financial backing. The equipment used today is vastly more efficient, but it also costs more, consumes more power overall at scale, and generates serious heat. To stay in the game, miners have to focus on power efficiency and operating costs, which is why things like immersion cooling and purpose-built mining containers are becoming the norm. Transaction fees, those extra payments users attach to their Bitcoin transactions to get them processed faster, now matter a lot more to miners than they used to. After the 2024 halving slashed the main block reward, these fees started making up a larger chunk of miner income, especially during times when the network gets crowded. Think market hype, price surges, or waves of NFT-style activity. But here's the catch. Fee income isn't consistent. It can spike one week and drop the next, making it an unreliable base for long-term planning. As a result, mining power today is heavily concentrated. While technically anyone can still mine, in practice, most of the network's computing power, or hash rate, is controlled by a few massive players. Public data on mining pools makes this clear. The top 5 mining groups usually account for the majority of the total activity on the network. That said, Bitcoin's core system remains decentralized in how it functions. No one can rewrite the rules or take over the protocol. But from a business perspective, mining has become way more centralized than it was a decade ago. The landscape now favors those who can operate at scale, lock in cheap energy deals, and manage industrial-grade hardware. For solo miners or small setups, it's no longer just about having a machine and crossing your fingers. You either need serious financial backing, ultra-low electricity costs, or a very smart edge to make it work. In 2025 and 2026, Bitcoin mining is all about getting the most out of your electricity. The machines doing the work, called ASICs, are now judged less by raw power and more by efficiency, measured in joules per terahash. That just means how much energy it takes to do a set amount of mining. A lower number means a cheaper operation. For example, if an older machine uses 20 joules per terahash and a newer one uses 12, the second one saves real money, especially when you're running thousands of them non-stop. Since power is the biggest cost, even small improvements in efficiency have a huge impact. That's why miners aren't just upgrading machines, they're also upgrading how they cool them. Immersion cooling, submerging machines in special liquid, is becoming the norm. It helps prevent overheating, cuts dust problems, and lets miners push machines harder without damage. Operators like CleanSpark and Marathon now run entire farms using this method, and some report cooling costs dropping by 30 to 40%. There's also a growing trend of building hybrid data centers, setups that support both Bitcoin mining and high-performance computing, like AI. ASICs can't run AI, but the infrastructure, power systems, cooling, and layout is similar. So miners are designing spaces flexible enough to pivot when needed. Mining does not exist in a vacuum. By 2026, regulatory approaches to Bitcoin mining vary sharply by jurisdiction. Some regions have tightened rules around grid usage and reporting. Others have formalized mining as a recognized industrial activity, and a few actively court miners to stabilize excess generation. Energy scrutiny remains intense. In response, many operators now co-locate with renewable generation, use curtailed power, or implement waste heat reuse, such as district heating or industrial processes. These practices are documented in government reports, academic studies, and industry disclosures. For home hobbyists paying residential electricity rates, the evidence strongly suggests no, unless mining is treated as an educational experiment or subsidized by otherwise wasted power. For small commercial operators, profitability depends almost entirely on electricity pricing, hosting efficiency, and tolerance for Bitcoin price volatility. For large, vertically integrated miners, mining can still make strategic sense, particularly when paired with long-term power agreements and disciplined capital management. For everyone else, exposure alternatives exist, including public mining companies, regulated exchange-traded products where available, or simply holding Bitcoin directly. Mining carries unique risks: hardware depreciation, regulatory shifts, energy price volatility, and long-term technological uncertainty. Those risks must be understood before committing capital. Bottom line, Bitcoin mining in 2026 is not dead, but it is no longer forgiving. The winners are efficient, well-capitalized, and power-savvy. Everyone else should think very carefully before plugging anything in.